late-breaking development in the fight against the Wuhan virus. The Food and Drug Administration has just authorized the emergency use of the experimental antiviral drug remdesivir. The drug, produced by Gilead, has proven to be a promising potential therapeutic treatment for the virus. Gilead's CEO announcing the company will donate 1.5 million vials of the drug and help get patients to patients in critical need. And explosive new developments in the case against the politically corrupt Obama-era FBI and Justice Department officials who conspired to set up and to frame former National Security Advisor General Michael Flynn. Sources familiar with the investigation tell Fox News that U.S. Attorney John Durham has reviewed the recently released documents from the Flynn case, and that Durham now believes the corrupt actions laid out in those documents are sufficient to bring charges against members of the FBI and the Department of Justice who carried out criminal acts against General Flynn. Durham is said to be speaking regularly with Attorney General Bill Barr and is building what some sources call a serious case against those FBI and DOJ officials. Durham is expected to wrap up his investigation by the end of this summer. President Trump has been briefed on the case, we're told, and had this to say about the radical Dems and the deep state's actions.
Ultimately, they were looking to destroy the presidency. They were looking to destroy a duly elected president who beat the hell out of a horrible candidate called Crooked Hillary.
And also new today, former Vice President and prospective Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden denying for the first time that he sexually assaulted a former staffer back in 1993 during his time in the Senate. Biden called for a search of the National Archives for any records that might pertain to those allegations, but he refused to approve a similar search of his senatorial papers, currently sealed at the University of Delaware. Listen to this.
Why not approve a search of her name in those records?
Approve a search of her name?
Yes, and reveal anything that might be related to Tara Reade in the University of Delaware records.
There is nothing. They wouldn't. They're not there. And if it's, I don't understand the point you're trying to make. Is the material in the University of Delaware has no personnel files in it.
Why not do a search for Tara Reade's name in the University of Delaware records?
Look, I mean, who does that search?
Well, the Trump administration continues to lead the world in the fight against the Wuhan virus, and communist China is still doing everything in its power to deflect international blame and to cover up, to lie about their response to the virus that they unleashed on the world without warning. British doctors today warning health officials that 250 Chinese-made ventilators recently bought from a Chinese company will harm or kill Wuhan virus patients using them because of faulty oxygen supply and design. China's Commerce Ministry says more than 70 countries have signed almost 200 contracts for Chinese medical supplies priced at $1.4 billion. Those countries include Canada, the Netherlands, and Finland. They all received millions of Chinese masks that weren't safe for their healthcare workers. Other countries, such as Spain and the United Kingdom, received faulty testing kits from China. Communist China also infiltrating American universities, as we now know. The Education Department is reportedly asking the University of Texas about their relationship with the Wuhan Institute of Virology and other Chinese universities and companies, including Huawei. That laboratory at the center of a U.S. investigation for its role in the origin of the Wuhan virus pandemic. President Trump saying he has seen proof that the virus started in that Wuhan lab.
Have you seen anything at this point that gives you a high degree of confidence that the Wuhan Institute of Virology was the origin of this virus?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have. The World Health Organization should be ashamed of themselves because they're like the public relations agency for China.
As the Trump administration continues its investigation into the origins of the Wuhan virus, the radical Dems are teeing up another investigation of President Trump, if you can believe that. House Speaker Pelosi is signing Democrats to serve on the panel led by James Clyburn. Among them, Maxine Waters, Jamie Raskin, Carolyn Maloney. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy calls those appointments of the panel purely political, and he doubts Republicans will even participate. Well, joining us tonight is a member of the leadership, House Minority Whip, Steve Scalise. Congressman, it is great to have you with us. And let's start with that panel, the idea that Republicans would not participate. Your thoughts?
Well, Lou, I think when you list those names that you just mentioned, I mean, those were all people who have been very rabid, people that have been just focused on the impeachment of Donald Trump, regardless of fact. And, of course, they all voted for the hoax impeachment. And you're seeing this whole thing blow up with these latest papers that have come out that show that they were targeting Flynn. They tried to set him up. The dirty cops over at the FBI, I'm sure we'll talk about that. That's got to be dealt with. I wish they were focusing on that and cleaning up the problems within the FBI so that the vast majority of our FBI agents who do such a great job defending our country can be exonerated, but the bad cops need to be held accountable. And frankly, I think some need to go to jail. That's where the focus needs to be, holding China accountable, not this continuous drumbeat of just harassing the president. They've never wanted to work with him on anything. They just want to harass him every day. They impeached him. They'll probably try to do it again. Let's pull together and solve real problems. Let's focus on getting our economy back open so we can get Americans working safely, dealing with this virus, not just the daily drumbeat of trying to find something to beat the president up on.
You couldn't be more right about the Dems and these radical Dems and their investigations and hearings and nonsense that have one design, and that is to subvert the president of the United States and distract from his extraordinary achievements, historic achievements, in 3 years, despite their worst intentions possible. Let's turn to that very issue. I have to say to you, I'm proud of you and the rest of the leadership for considering, and I hope refusing, to participate in another absolute farce of a hearing or investigation that would be led by James Clyburn, who, by the way, I should remind everyone who might have forgotten, he's the one who basically turned it all around for Joe Biden. 4 members of those Democrats are already announced ardent, feverish supporters of Joe Biden. It just makes all the sense in the world not to participate. One of your colleagues yesterday, Devin Nunes, who I think has been the stalwart in your party for standing up for this president and against the politically corrupt, toxic FBI and Justice Department and special counsel, he suggested that not even to participate with left-wing news media outlets because it's just like walking into the DNC, I'm paraphrasing, walking into the DNC and sitting down for coffee while they take notes. Your thoughts?
Well, look, Devin Nunes has been right from the very beginning, and you can go back over years ago before the Mueller investigation even started, when Devin said, boy, he's seeing things that are really concerning within the FBI with people that abused the FISA process. I saw some of that classified information, and it concerned me as well that enough wasn't being focused on people who abuse their power. Lou, you've highlighted this, but Devin was beating that drum from the very beginning. And, we saw others, of course, like Jim Jordan and Mark Meadows, who's now the chief of staff to the president, raising alarm bells. And the Democrats wanted to try not to expose it, but to cover it up. Because as it turned out, these were people that were very pro-Hillary Clinton, people that hated Donald Trump. And they were using their badge, in essence. These were FBI agents using their positions of power, abusing their positions of power to try to take down a candidate for president of the United States. And it continued when Donald Trump got elected. They literally tried to set Flynn up. Comey tried to set the president up. These people need to be held accountable. I don't think it stops at Strzok and Page. I think that's just the beginning. And the Durham investigation has been going on long enough. We've seen enough to know there are people that need to be brought to justice today. And I think a lot of these people are going to roll over on the folks higher up. And it may go as high as Comey. I wouldn't be surprised. This all happened under the Obama administration. I wonder if President Obama knew this was going on right under his nose with his FBI trying to take out a candidate for president of the United States. Nobody, Republican or Democrat candidate for president, should have agents of the FBI abusing their power to try to undermine an election in America. We're already concerned about Russia. We need to make sure we're doing enough to stop Russia, which, by the way, they tried to interfere with our election when Obama was president. But we shouldn't have our own law enforcement agencies doing it. There needs to be accountability. People need to go to jail, starting with Strzok at the top there.
And as you said, they need to go to jail. There's no question about it. This is about right and wrong as well as what is lawful or unlawful to try to overthrow a president of the United States. It's an obvious conspiracy among
and entrapping
the radical
a general,
Dems,
going after good
the
people.
deep state. Yeah,
they're trying to tarnish
General
the names
Flynn,
of good people.
These documents
along the
that
way.
have been, and destroy them. Talk about the Democrats' fondness for the politics of destruction. This is case number one on that chart. Congressman, it's always good to have you with us. We thank you so much. We hope that everyone there in Louisiana is ready to get back to business. How soon do you think that'll happen?
Not soon enough. Look, we had a great flyover today, and just blocks from my house, Ochsner Hospital, one of those great places where our doctors and nurses, the frontline workers, are taking care of people. You know, New Orleans, of course, was a hotbed of coronavirus. And they did a flyover today. The president said he's going to do this in a lot of cities to pay tribute to our first responders and our hospital workers. B-52s and F-15s flying over. You could feel the roar and the thunder. I posted a video on my Facebook page, and over on Twitter, we sent out a video of this flyover, and it gives you goosebumps. It reminds you of just what's great about America. People are ready to start getting out, knowing we're going to be doing things safely. This isn't about taking risks or letting our foot off the gas. It's about saying we know that this disease is out there, but we're America. We need to start opening our business again. People want to start getting back to work again, using safer protocols. But we can't keep this economy shut down for another month or 2 months and think that there's going to be something to go back to that we would want to see. We've got to start getting this going. And it was a great tribute today to see that flyover. President Trump is leading the way, and this was another good example of how the president supports those who are supporting us, our first responders and our hospital workers.
Yeah, it's a great tribute from the Air Force, from the Navy, and of course the Marines. It's just it's terrific to honor all of the folks who are working the healthcare. Did I leave out the Air Force? Shame on me. Thunderbirds and B-52s all go together with those F-15s. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Congressman Steve Scalise.
Great being with you, Lou. Thanks.
Up next, more trouble for Joe Biden. Thank you. The new questions now about the person tasked with vetting his vice presidential nominee. Investigative journalist John Solomon joins us tonight with that and much more. Also, how those new documents from the fraudulent case against General Michael Flynn, do they implicate former President Obama? Was it an attempt to overthrow President Trump? General Flynn's attorney, Sidney Powell, joins us right after these quick messages. We'll be right back. Newly released documents about the efforts of the FBI and Justice Department to set up and to frame General Michael Flynn are further evidence of the political corruption that raged throughout the upper levels of the FBI and DOJ during the Obama administration. Increasingly, questions arise about the role of the former president. How did the Justice Department in his presidency become so politicized that the FBI could carry out criminal acts against a national security advisor, could conspire against a president of the United States with the obvious intent to overthrow him? As we told you here last night, these new documents show the FBI was moving to close the investigation of General Flynn on the 4th of January, 2017, 16 days before the inauguration of President Trump, to close the file because there wasn't any derogatory information. But that same day, disgraced FBI agent Peter Strzok frantically made certain the case remained open, even adding, quote, seventh floor was involved, meaning fired FBI Director James Comey. So where does the Obama White House come in? Well, the next day, January 5th, Comey attended a meeting at the White House, a meeting in the Oval Office with President Obama. Joining them, Vice President Joe Biden, former Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates, and Susan Rice, also in the meeting. That meeting was memorialized by Susan Rice, who wrote that President Obama told the group to ensure, quote, every aspect of the Russia issue is handled by the intelligence and law enforcement communities by the book. Susan Rice's attorney provides more evidence that General Flynn was being discussed in that meeting. In a 2018 letter to Congress, Rice said those in the room were fearful of sharing classified intelligence with members of the incoming Trump team, especially General Michael Flynn. Now that's odd. Remember, Flynn had served as the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency until he was fired by President Obama. Then the next day, January 6th, 3 consecutive days, and on the 3rd, James Comey gave a briefing to the president about the fraudulent Steele dossier in Trump Tower. Clearly, Comey had the intention of intimidating President Trump, and less than a week later, Comey and Sally Yates signed off on the first renewal of the FISA warrant against Carter Page, using the fraudulent Steele dossier as a pretext with which to gain authority to spy on the President of the United States. Our next guest this evening is General Michael Flynn's attorney. Joining us is Sidney Powell, also a former federal prosecutor, best-selling author, and great American. Sidney, first of all, congratulations on all that you have brought to ground here, all the progress that have been made in less than a year as his defense attorney. Give us a sense where Judge Sullivan is in this, and whether or not you think he is ready to do the right thing. And I would like to get your opinion on the legal responsibilities of this sitting judge to exonerate, to end this hell in the legal system for General Michael Flynn.
I wish I knew where Judge Sullivan were on it, Lou. He entered an unusual order yesterday that stops us from doing any further filings like we've done last Friday and then this week to produce the new information that the government agreed we could file redacted as they provided it to us on the record. But now Judge Sullivan has foreclosed any further filings by us, even with the agreement of the government, until Mr. Jensen has completed his review. So I don't know when that'll be. I don't have any direct information from the Department of Justice at all. I seem to be the last one to know when I'm going to get something. The news media knows more than I do about it. But he should dismiss the case for egregious government misconduct without a doubt. It's established at every turn that the government has been hiding this evidence that shows their own crimes while they were accusing Mr. Flynn falsely of any crimes because they made it all up. And the FBI has known that for 3 years, and special counsel has known that since day one and pursued this prosecution in the utmost bad faith and vindictiveness and maliciousness.
Well, I frankly am tired of hearing Judge Sullivan take a look at evidence and the developments that are plain and in front of his face and ignore them, and I think ignore them wantonly and absurdly, and certainly without care for the defendant in the case, whose rights have been just trampled over the course of 3 years by the Justice Department and the FBI and whomever the parties were giving the Justice Department and FBI their orders. What is the likelihood that the evidence that you've unearthed here, these documents, are absolutely just damning of the FBI and the Justice Department? What in the world would it take for a judge to have the sense to end this now in the name of justice?
It's going to have to be ended now. There is no way this can proceed forward with the evidence that's come out in the last 10 days. It's the only crimes are by the FBI, and that's obvious now, more so every time we get a new document. And I've heard that we're going to get a lot more documents by the end of next week. The judge did order them to respond to our latest filing by May 11th. So I would think that would be the latest date by which the Department of Justice itself will probably move to dismiss this matter, as they should, to start restoring credibility to the department itself, because they've gotten a horrible black eye thanks to the FBI and the special counsel operation, and the fact that nobody has spoken out about this until Mr. Jensen and Mr. Barr and Mr. Durham got on it and produced these documents.
Well, good for them and good for you. We're going to continue with Sidney Powell next. As more information comes out about the deep state's clear deception and its efforts to frame General Michael Flynn, the left-wing lamestream media is largely trying to ignore the explosive findings, and the following are just a few headlines from the past few days by the few outlets that did take note. The New York Times, for example, its headline, quote, "Flynn lawyers seize on newly released FBI documents." Wow. CNN, handwritten note shows how FBI official approached the key Michael Flynn interview. Well, and one of the ways was to frame them. They left that out of their headline. The Washington Post writing, quote, "FBI notes on Michael Flynn unlikely to convince judge he was entrapped, legal experts say." They need new legal experts, I believe. And the Post wrote, quote, "The Michael Flynn revelation, bombshell or business as usual?" Well, in the swamp, it can be both. It's business as usual in the swamp, and this is definitely a bombshell. We're back with General Michael Flynn's attorney, Sidney Powell. Sidney, I have to believe that you're gratified to hear the Fox News report that sources close to the investigation believe that John Durham, in his investigation now, after looking at the documents that have been revealed, believes there is a basis for criminal proceedings against some of the FBI agents and Justice Department officials. Your reaction?
Yes, I think any reasonable prosecutor looking at these facts would have to see that, particularly when they compare the statements in the FBI agent's own handwriting or text messages to lies they've told to Congress and other agents. It's going to be a significant prosecution, I expect. And there are multiple offenses that have happened: obstruction of justice, conspiracy, false statements to Congress and to other officials. There's a lot to unearth there, and Mr. Durham seems to be the perfect person to do that. We can tell from the documents he's provided, as they've been marked to us, that some of them came from his investigation. So it's a credit to him and others. But the FBI has been hiding most of what we've been given for at least 3 years. That is extremely concerning. Sean talks all the time about the 99% being great, but they should have exposed this a lot sooner.
Mm-hmm. Sean is a great friend and a great broadcaster. He may have to revise that percentage, because the fact is,
I think we're all going to have to revise
level of corruption. Yeah, this is a much bigger problem than anyone suspected. It's not only the officials at the top. There had to be a lot of agents who knew what was going on and held their tongues and didn't say a word over the course of these 3 years. It is really a terrible moment for the nation and for the agencies, the FBI in particular, and the Department of Justice. I want to ask you about some of the people involved in this. 2 agents were there with the president. We know Peter Strzok was one of them. Who was the other, and why don't we hear that name?
When General Flynn was interviewed?
Yes.
that agent, they're still redacting his name, and it's under a protective order, so I can't say his name, but he's the same agent that we just learned from the Inspector General's report in December was the one who was slipped secretly into the presidential briefing back in August of 2016 when Trump was a nominee to spy on General Flynn and President Trump. So he's been in it consistently and a big part of the problem, but he's apparently still in the FBI and his name is still redacted. I mean, Christopher Wray has been sitting on all of this for this length of time since he was installed as director of the FBI. Nothing has been brought to light, and the media hasn't just been helping the left. They've been conspiratorially complicit in a lot of it because, don't forget, many members of the media were paid by Fusion GPS and then by Dianne Feinstein's former chief of staff, who raised $50 million right after the election to keep promoting the Russia hoax that they all knew was a lie.
Yeah, it is just an extraordinary moment in history, and for the left to simply ignore it. Forget about their complicity. Forget about their aiding and abetting. To absolutely ignore their responsibilities to let the public know what is happening. It's just stunning. And the corporate masters of those organizations to permit this are just as scurrilous and just as bereft of any conscience whatsoever, or obligation or sense of duty to this country and the public they're supposed to serve. Let me ask you this. Can you conceive of the FBI and the Department of Justice doing all of this without the, if not direction, the certain knowledge and tacit approval, at least, of the President of the United States?
No. I mean, from the text messages of Strzok and Page, the White House was running this. The White House knew everything. James Comey's meeting in the Oval Office on January 5th. Go back and look at that memo that Comey wrote to himself on January 5th. That alone is damning. They talked about General Flynn there. They talked about the Steele dossier there. They sent Comey to Trump Tower the very next day to brief the nominee Trump and President-elect Trump only on the salacious aspects of the Steele dossier. They did that specifically to set the news hook for CNN and BuzzFeed to then run with the whole Steele dossier story that they all knew was a lie. It was all very carefully orchestrated with the media, the CIA, the FBI. John Brennan was at that meeting. Clapper was at that meeting. Clapper then tells Ignatius to take the kill shot on General Flynn on January 10th. Then the first article comes out. They were planning and orchestrating every bit of it.
Sidney Powell with the best, most succinct, and just perfect rundown of it all in just a matter of seconds. Thanks so much. We appreciate it. Sidney Powell. 18 points over his primary rival, Senator Kelly Loeffler, the establishment choice and incumbent senator from Georgia. Loeffler has a 20% approval rating. The Georgians give her a 47% disapproval rating. The National Republican Senatorial Committee clearly backing the wrong candidate, and of course they are led eventually by Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader. On March 2nd, the committee said Collins was on a, quote, political kamikaze mission in his run against Loeffler. On April 1st, a spokesperson told the Washington Examiner that there is, quote, a special place in political hell for attacking Loeffler for insider trading and profiting off the pandemic. And April 17th, that committee sent a memo to Senate campaigns saying, in part, quote, don't defend Trump other than the China travel ban. Attack China. In other words, separate from the president who is assuring them of their political future. It is so reminiscent. It resonates with 2018, doesn't it? Only this time it's in the Senate, in the House, when Paul Ryan famously told Republicans not to run on the president's record, and they got slaughtered. So McConnell and the leadership on that campaign committee obviously not learning much and not knowing much more. Joe Biden selecting former Democratic Senator from Connecticut, Christopher Dodd, to run Biden's search for a vice presidential candidate. Now, Dodd was the former DNC chair back in the 1990s when the committee accepted illegal foreign donations from China. Dodd also accepted $36,000 in political donations from his good friend Harvey Weinstein, second only to the donations Weinstein made to Barack Obama. And like Joe Biden, Dodd has also been accused of sexual improprieties during his time in the Senate. Well, joining us tonight, a man who talked with someone who says she was assaulted by Chris Dodd. Joining us now is one of the leading investigative journalists in the country, award-winning investigative journalist and editor-in-chief of Just the News. John, great to have you here.
This directly under Michael Flynn. Your reaction to the bombshells showing FBI officials tried to entrap Michael Flynn. What was your reaction to these stories?
It sounded really familiar. I mean, I've not talked to Mike Flynn since he left the White House in 2017. But I also was targeted by the FBI, not as badly as he was and not as vigorously, but it was a lot of the same behavior. You know, they show up unannounced. They say you don't really need a lawyer. They seized my files. It sounds like they seized Mike Flynn's files and government records and phone logs and text messages and emails, and then tried to use those to trap him, to get him a little confused so that if he said, gee, I thought that phone call happened on Tuesday night and it really happened on Wednesday morning, they could say, aha, that's a lie. That's perjury. We're going to charge you with a crime. So I think they did a lot of the same things to him they did with me, which is perjury traps, gotcha questions. And in his case, they attempted to blackmail him because they said that they would charge his son with a crime unless Flynn pleaded guilty. And I think they knew that Flynn pleaded guilty to a crime that he didn't commit.
So instead of investigating a crime, they're trying to manufacture and create and cook up crimes to railroad people to get them. Do you think they were trying to go after Trump? And the other question is, Chuck Grassley says throw the book at them. Do you think John Durham's going to go after them? What do you think? First, do you think they were trying to Flynn to go after Trump?
Yeah, look, Flynn is collateral damage. I was collateral damage. They didn't really care about us. They wanted Trump, and they wanted to go after Flynn, blackmail Flynn, so he would then turn on Trump and maybe make stuff up about Trump. They did the same thing to me. They implied that they'd let me off if I either pleaded guilty to a crime I didn't commit or if I implicated, in this case, Flynn and Trump himself in crimes they didn't commit. So that was the game. But in Flynn's case, there were two other things going on. One was Flynn had made it pretty clear that he wanted a thorough reorganization of the intelligence community in the Trump administration. He had been head of the Defense Intelligence Agency during the Obama administration, and he had made significant, serious reforms, streamlines, and really ruffled a lot of feathers. He was intending to do the same thing with the 16 sprawling agencies of the intelligence community. So to a certain extent, what the FBI and Justice Department did, and probably the CIA as well, was a preemptive strike. Get at Flynn, get rid of him before he can go after them. And then secondly, and I think this has gotten not enough attention, is that years before the Trump administration, a woman accused Andrew McCabe, Justice Department, FBI Andrew McCabe, of sexual harassment. And Flynn endorsed this woman. He supported her claim. And I don't know whatever happened to that claim. And maybe it's just disappeared. Maybe it's still there. But Andrew McCabe had a real vendetta against Flynn personally because of this sexual harassment allegation against McCabe.
Well, we've never heard that. And that should be given a careful vetting. That's important what you just said. You know, so what kind of crimes were they trying to get you to implicate President and then candidate Trump with? Or President-elect Trump? What kind of crimes were they trying to get you to say?
They kept saying, well, Trump must have given you marching orders to tell Flynn, to tell the Russian ambassador to cut a deal. I mean, that was the line of their questioning. There was one point, Liz, where they looked at the records. Remember, I have no files in front of me. I just cherry-picked what they wanted to show me and whatnot. And so they're saying to me, well, there's a 90-minute period when you're in Mar-a-Lago with President Trump where you didn't text, you didn't email, you didn't make phone calls. Is that when President Trump told you what to say to Flynn, to the Russian ambassador? And I looked at it and I thought, God, what happened in that 90 minutes? And then I remembered, oh, my husband and I took a long walk along the beach. I mean, they had a narrative that they want, and I just wasn't going to give it to them. Neither was Trump. And they would have been all lies. So throw the book at him, I hope.
KT. Maybe John Durham will do that. Thank you so much, KT. Quite a story there. Come back soon. We love having KT on. I'm Elizabeth McDonald. Thanks for watching. We hope you have a good weekend. We're going to have way more